There are 651 GameCube games, and I'm trying to beat them all while at the mercy of this horrendous wheel. Welcome to beating the GameCube. Game 34 is BloodRayne. Released in 2002, it was developed by Terminal Reality and published by Majesco Sales. I'm gonna say it, this is a weird one. It's an adventure-y, hack-and-slashy, shooty cocktail with more than a little fan service sprinkled in.
And mix them all together in a big jug.
We'll cover the story or lack thereof, but things make less sense as you go. My level of confusion and bemusement playing this may have rivaled Killer 7, and I didn't even know that was possible. Still, it was an experience, and one that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. Did I suck all of the blood, or did I just plain suck? Let's find out. The aforementioned confusion begins from the very intro cinematic. I think the scriptwriter dropped half the pages and hoped that nobody would notice. We see our protagonist Rayne killing assorted ghouls and vampires while some hooded figures observe. They state that as a half-vampire, she has fewer weaknesses than a full-blood but must still feed. They leave a medallion behind, and after using a friggin' hand grenade to blow up some more spoops, Rayne finds the medallion and we get the title splash. I think the menu is pretty striking, although it does have various suggestive pictures. Options are always good to see. There are control schemes, volume and brightness sliders, and a place to enter cheat codes. The only mode is the story, which I'll be beating on the default difficulty of normal. You also choose first or third person controls. I opted for first person, which has you move and strafe with the main stick and turn the camera with the C stick. I was then unceremoniously thrust into the tutorial area, 1933's Louisiana, with a character that isn't introduced, so we're off to a great start. Checking the manual informed me that this is Mintz. Apparently she is our mentor in the Brimstone Society, those hooded bros who left the medallion earlier. Get used to this. The story is bafflingly disconnected and characters just get shoved in. At least the bulk of controls are explained. Rayne is incredibly athletic. She can run like the Flash, jump like the Hulk, tightrope across power lines, do a spinny fly through the air, flip in every direction, but she also handles like a greased up shopping cart. We're also taught our melee combat basics. The left shoulder button uses your twin blades to chop dice and carve through enemies. Doing so enough will unlock Blood Rage, a temporary power-up that provides super strong melee combos. We also have toggleable aura vision. This highlights enemies and uses a traffic light system to indicate their current health. It also functions as our objective marker with our next target glowing a luminous blue. Finally, we get to use the B button to feed. This is a strong tool for dispatching enemies whilst also being our only source of health replenishment. Whew, that's a lot packed into the first 5 minutes. Mintz then says it's time to go to church.
Damn bloodsuckers.
Careful with your relatives.
They should have more sense. Thanks for dragging me out here. I just love the water.
You're only half vampire. A dip might hurt, but it won't kill you.
Sort of sticking a finger in my eye doesn't mean I have to do it.
No time for pleasantries, just like your half-sister.
I'm just confident in my abilities.
So am I.
This game is like an abridged or parody version of itself. Characters talk too quickly, and the dialogue always has that disjointed, choppy cadence to it. Rayne is voiced by Laura Bailey, who's famous for characters like Jaina Proudmore, and getting such an atrocious performance out of her must be an achievement in its own right. The TLDR here is that a village in Louisiana is being attacked by unidentified organic life forms. They infect the locals with a disease that liquefies their brains and turns them into zombies. Our mission is to destroy all sources of the infection and the infected alike. Said zombies attack the church whilst Mintz is searching for clues, and now we have guns. Hell yeah, brother. Guns in Louisiana. Gunplay is simple yet effective. Rayne auto-aims and right trigger fires. You can still melee and suck blood too. Z switches your weapon mode, prioritizing gun order by heaviest, lightest, special, or explosive. When ammo is depleted, the current weapon is dropped and she moves on to the next. More stellar voice acting as Rayne and Mintz yap for a bit. The story barely makes sense, but we will try to explain it where we can. I was then finally given free reign, to tackle various objectives around the town. I was tasked with reaching a graveyard and destroying a big biomass life form. So while we show you the general gist of gameplay, now is a good time to talk about presentation. Something that is strikingly lacking in this game is music. The vast majority of areas have little or no background music whatsoever. The entire first hour of the game had almost nothing. That's crazy. This is the exact sort of game that needed some Devil May Cry style bops to breathe some life and atmosphere into what is otherwise a very drab and dull world. But no, just ambient swamp noises of crickets and frogs. And it is a drab affair, colour is used very sparingly, and whilst this can be an interesting artistic direction if used to intentionally create contrast or make specific visual elements pop, that is not the case here. I personally judge games little on graphics and more on artistic direction. Sadly, I think BloodRayne lacks in both. At least the gameplay is okay. Learning to control Rain has a fun learning curve as she zips around like nobody's business. Early on, the enemies were mostly fodder, which also creates a fun feeling of player power, and I enjoy the interplay of guns and melee, allowing you to decide when you want to utilize your much more powerful firearms and ways you conserve ammo by going in for close quarters. The biomass is like a little mini-boss, but utilizing Blood Rage unlocks those insanely powerful combos that I mentioned, and I sliced it to ribbons.
Well done. Strange creatures, aren't they?
Strange isn't the first word that comes to mind. What are they?
I'm not sure, but it seems they carry a disease that causes mutations in humans.
This is definitely a guilty pleasure sort of game. It's pretty awful, but it's so bad it's good sometimes. Mintz finishes explaining that the spidery things cause the disease, and they eat humans as well. I also met the local gravedigger who was not infected, and he asked me to bring any other uninfected humans to him. So that's my next objective. Lastly, Mintz hooked me up with a scorpion-style "get over here" hookshot, which allows me to blood-suck enemies from a distance. Something important to note, only humanoid creatures can be given the big suck. That means you can only recover health when fighting zombies and dudes. This often became relevant because large stretches of the game have no way to replenish health, and there are some serious difficulty spikes. Now this one is long and combat heavy, so we'll be condensing things. Unlike previous games that I've covered where new mechanics are steadily introduced and complexity ramps up, this one stays pretty similar from here all the way until the end. We do unlock a few powers which I will cover, but the core gameplay receives little development. The last significant thing I should mention is that Rain takes damage when touching water. Apparently not just running water either. Dipping a toe in any water source instantly chunks your HP, and there is a lot of water in this game. IGN would not approve. This 40 or so minute segment was very tedious. I used my aura vision to follow the glowing blue objective, and I barreled through hordes of enemies as I hunted down the biomass creatures and saved assorted townsfolk. I spent a pretty fair chunk of time horribly lost as well. There were various times I needed to enter buildings, and the objective marker is not exactly helpful when it just gives you a vague sense of direction but zero indication on how to actually reach it. I think a Twilight Princess style scent trail would have been so much more useful and made more thematic sense. As it stands, the biggest thing that hurts this game is the sheer vagueness and where you're going. This was annoying early and downright awful as we progressed. Killing the mini-bosses was unlocking some new moves, complete with a hearty boo bounce for good measure, but melee is essentially just spam L, so these don't really alter combat in any meaningful way. Now that I had culled the biomass and saved the townsfolk, it was time to meet back up with Mintz. Unfortunately, whilst randomly staring at a frog, she got eaten by a big spooder, and I guess that's the end of her. No, I was so invested in that character, we knew so much about her, and I had grown so attached. Anyway. Louisiana concludes with Rain locating the biggest biomass of all, the Queen. I did a long segment where I used my aura vision to pursue it across a meandering path over water, utilizing rooftops and power lines. This was probably the most enjoyable part of the first area, and unsurprisingly, it culminated in a boss fight. The fight itself was simple, the Queen hardly attacked me, and I just kept running around. I could farm Blood Rage, and in Rage state you take less damage and you inflict insane amounts, so once I was in it, I just spammed L. This also unlocked a new attack, the level 3 Blood Rage combo. This just inflicts a little extra damage. Now, if you thought things were weird so far, you haven't seen anything.
Back to sleep for you. Aw, did you eat something that isn't agreeing with your tummy? Glowing ribs?
What's happening?
You have what I'm looking for. You might say I'm a collector of these things. Nothing personal, although I will enjoy this greatly.
But now there's a Nazi of a flaming sword for a hand or something. Oh my god. If you're confused, don't worry, we were too. After that glowing rib non sequitur, we skipped to 1938 and now we're hunting Nazis. That's right, Nazis. Jürgen Wolf was that flaming sword arm guy, and he is basically the Red Skull of this universe. He has founded the Gegengeist Group, or GGG, an arm of the Nazi army that's focused on harnessing the power of the occult to help Hitler. So basically Hydra. They have found an ancient relic of immense power, and I am tasked with stopping them from attaining it while slaying 16 high-profile Nazi officers, including Wolf himself. So yeah, this is my life now. We are at a gigantic base, and I have to work my way through and slay all 16 targets. Apparently that rib also granted us a new power, Dilated Perception. This slows time dramatically and lets me dodge bullets Matrix style, and also sneak up on enemies with greater ease. I was also introduced to the concept of elite soldiers. This will include all bosses and various high-ranking Nazis. These slippery fish are almost immune to melee attacks, can knock you away when you try to feed on them, and are generally far tankier. This is where Dilated Perception really comes in. Whilst all time is slowed, including rain, the slowdown in movement massively ramped my ability to control the otherwise unwieldy rain and make small, precise movements. With enough finesse, you can still feed on most elite soldiers, and feeding is generally an insta-kill, making it nicely cheesable. A good chunk of my playtime is just spent wading through constantly respawning hordes of dudes and getting horrendously lost whilst trying to locate that damned blue orb. Thankfully, unlike in the previous segment, weapons are plentiful and I can often break into various caches or just steal them from dispatched Nazis. So long as I used a healthy amount of chopping and sucking, I could always have a veritable arsenal at my disposal. After several minutes of combat, I encountered the first of my 16 targets. This guy had some Wesker style enhancements and got a cool intro where he grabs a knife. Luckily for him, I'm enhanced too. BloodRayne is just so insanely strong. It negates the elite soldier's dodging powers and makes your damage so absurd that I killed him in a couple of swings. 1 down, 15 to go. The base is segmented up into a ton of different areas, and generally these are blocked off by electronic doors that are offline until you have eliminated the current area's target. Inside the next area, I quickly located my next victim, but not only did he flee down an elevator, one of his goons stole the battery to operate the lift and ran away. When I said you fight a lot of dudes in this game, I was underselling it. It could be a real slog just how endlessly the enemies throw themselves at you. I actually experienced my first of many deaths in this section because they beat me in a war of attrition. While sucking blood does heal you, and you can spin enemies to use them as a meat shield, this is a slow process, and if incoming damage outweighs the healing, you're cooked. This is where I learned that the only checkpoints in the game are screen transitions. Anytime you cross into an area that has a proper load screen, that is your new checkpoint. Here, that sent me back a good 5 minutes and meant I had to fight all those same guys again, which was annoying, but later it gets really painful. On my second attempt, I tracked down the battery thief, and after grabbing a spot of lunch, I retrieved my prize. After finding my way back, I was able to reactivate the lift and I gave chase into the next floor. I tracked down that officer, and through stealth I was able to surpass his elite reflexes and I one-shot him by eating him. Nice, 14 more. The next area was just a stone's throw away, and that led to our second boss fight. So we're going to skip along to that because it was hilarious. Please just bear in mind, we have never met this character before, neither has Rain, we have no context, the game is just like this.
What's the shovel for, Von Blute?
How? Oh, just taking care of a collection from this morning's service. But I might find more uses for it.
I can think of some myself, but they have mostly to do with your backside, preacher.
You ignorant. I am a truly high priest, not a preacher.
Oversight on my part, do forgive me.
Atlantis. A legendary kingdom. A superior race with powers beyond our imagination. An area.
How does she know who this guy is?
Pure blood.
We've never met him before.
Pristine, but not all is lost. The greatest Atlantean leader, Beliar, was immortal. His body scattered in pieces in the destruction of Atlantis. Finally, we have located our great leader's skull. It is here, buried deep underground.
I'm sure you believe that. All of it. Everybody makes mistakes.
Enough of your insolence. I will prove Aryan superiority to you.
Look at his pulpits and turret. This game is crazy. I love it. Bless this mess, man. What an absolute meme of a game. This fight was too funny. I needed to angle myself behind him and shoot him to rack up damage, but he then pressed a button which yeeted his pulpit across the room to safety. The lower his health gets, the faster his reactions. It quickly became nigh impossible to hit him, even whilst utilizing Dilated Perception. Luckily for me, he does have goons in the room that I could snack on to stay healthy, and through perseverance, I steadily chunked him down. Once he was dealt with, I found some occult writings on Atlantis and Belia, and I would need to find a way to contact the Brimstone Society to warn them that the skull is the relic that the GGG are after. Thus, I battled my way to the comms room, and Brimstone told me that I had to get to the relic first. I was also tasked with blowing up the comm stack so the enemy could not call for backup. Locating the explosives and blowing up the stack was quick, but just whilst we head to the next area, I'd like to show you a snippet of how grindy this game is. I don't mind the wonky voice acting, nonsensical story, or the frenetic controls, but the sheer amount of combat you have to slog through to go anywhere or do anything is a real chore. I have to imagine the speedrun ignores almost every enemy, as there are very few mandatory ones, but in a casual playthrough, you quickly get overwhelmed, so I was forced to take things slowly. Eventually I found my next officer, and at this point I had a groove on how to fight them. Generally, getting behind them and eating them was the fastest way. We are approaching the end of what I would refer to as Act 2 of the game, and things are about to take another big turn, so let's put a bow on this part.
I see her! There! The intruder is at the dock! Do not allow her to escape!
Well, to be fair, the German accents are better than the Creole ones. Another quick skirmish meant another quick kill. We're making good progress, we have 11 more targets. Rayne can sense 2 more officers nearby, and that was pretty exciting for me, as it meant we were quickly moving towards being halfway done with the list. But surprise! The next officer is actually competent, and he ambushed me. He has his goons use the German Panzerschreck missile launchers, which the subtitles misspell like Shrek the Ogre, and these were no joke. They have cracked aim, and I was almost instantly blown to pieces. This would not be the last time I got shreked. Of course, that meant I was sent back to my last checkpoint, which was before that other officer, so I had to tackle him again. At this point, deaths were still only mildly punishing, and I had only experienced a couple, so I was pretty zen about it. On my second attempt, and armed with Blood Rage, I did some schmancy acrobatics, and I quickly eliminated the Shreks. I then turned my attention to the officer, and he only took a couple of shots. The final officer of Act 2 was also nearby, just some more mindless combat and chasing the glowy blue orb to find him. 9 more out there, and it's almost time to enter Act 3.
Code Zeus. Repeat, Code Zeus. Science lab security breach. All personnel abandon pursuit. Report to the science lab immediately. Get over here now. They're loose. They're dead.
Demons? That's right, demons, or Damites to be more accurate. In order to find out what on earth those are, I had some final bits to take care of. The Nazis are excavating the area below the base to extract Belia's skull, and thus I needed to work my way down there by opening various doors and elevators, by killing dudes and hunting officers. And all the while we began to hear creepy voices and whispers. I encountered a locked door with a switch nearby in a room populated with corpses. When I entered, the corpses reanimated and turned into the Damite things. These are semi-humanoid, but they have gross, gooey skulls, exposed tendrily body parts, and all other manner of creepy features. What's worse is killing the husk only exposes their real form, a floating spinal column topped with a gooey skull. Even the enhanced officers aren't safe. We quickly saw a Damite possess one, and this powers them up even more. Blood Rage is still cracked though, with half of the targets slain. That's 8 to go. This third act is definitely in contention for my most loathed part of the game. The Damites are obscenely tanky compared to previous enemies, and bullets are almost entirely ineffectual against them. So I was forced to spend a long amount of time engaging in melee and doing my best to dodge an onslaught of attacks. Add to that the vast majority of these enemies cannot be sucked on, and you have a recipe for quickly becoming overwhelmed. Even worse, there were segments that involved crossing bodies of water, which as mentioned quickly drain your health bar. So with nobody to give the big suck to and water blocking my path, this was a long trial and error sort of deal. This is also where I really began to feel the sting of the checkpoint system. Deaths became severely punishing, as these segments have very few loading screens. That meant a death could easily set me back 10 minutes and require me to fight the same things I'd just done. During my travels, I encountered a cutscene showing one of my remaining targets, the Butcheress, a German scientist obsessed with studying the Damites. She'll happily feed her own men to them if it will help her research. Unable to reach her though, I had to soldier on. This led to a very long segment where I was pinned down in a series of claustrophobic hallways by machine gun nests. This was really tricky as there is a never-ending wave of Damites to wade through whilst you press switches and operate machinery to expose the nests. Once I'd blown those sky high with a special grenade launcher I'd been saving, it was time for another boss battle. To reach said boss was no easy feat, of course. I was reminded of Metal Gear when dealing with an elite soldier that was funneling toxic gas into the chamber I was occupying. Breaking the correct window causes that to backfire on him. Now, in case that wasn't Metal Gear enough, the boss took things even further. The fight is against a mysterious Nazi colonel dubbed the Commando. He is far more enhanced than previous officers, and much like Grey Fox, has the power of stealth. This is a tough one. The battle takes place across several floors, and Commando spends the majority of it unseen and untargetable. I also quickly ran out of bullets, and like other elite soldiers, melee is very hard to use against him. Dilated perception was critical. It gave me the fine controls required to outmaneuver his attacks and whittle him down. I then blitzed him with Blood Rage at the end, and it was a photo finish looking at my health. Mercifully, there was now bog-standard human Nazis to fight, and that let me drain some of them to replenish my dismally low health bar. And it's just as well because it's back-to-back boss fights. I encountered another officer who revealed that the Damites act as the protectors of Beliar's skull. The Nazis woke them in their hunt for the relic, and that is why they attacked both me and them without discrimination. I then did the same window-smashing gas trick, making him the single quickest officer kill of the playthrough. It was straight into a cutscene as we are now confronting the Butcheress. We get the usual stilted dialogue you come to expect from this game, as she demonstrates how irredeemably evil she is by killing more of her own men and laughing about it. Chad and I were trying to remain classy in the face of some over-the-top jiggling.
Quite remarkable, really.
Yes.
If you say so. What are you gonna do with them?
Let me see. I could keep them here and feed them with my men, or I could unleash them on your country. Tough choice.
Oh my god, she's doing fancy flippy flips. Yet another tough fight here. Most of the bosses are obnoxiously tanky, and she is no exception. As is the norm, it was really hard to hit her with melee, and what complicates matters is she spends most of the fight running away, and that makes it hard to also rack up damage in Blood Rage. Furthermore, she constantly activates various traps like electrifying platforms and opening insta-kill pits. I put up a really solid effort on my first go, but there's just too much unavoidable damage, and it's so hard to pin her down. Fortunately, the cutscene meant I could instantly jump back in and try again. I lost a lot of health early and things did not look good, but when I unleashed the Blood Rage, I stood on the same little platform she was on when operating the death pits, and that let me do big combos over and over again. We yeeted her into the same pit that she was dumping her men into, and then we burned the Damites with the failsafe flamethrowers. With her and that other officer dispatched, I have just 5 targets left, and I would need to proceed into the mines to both find them and claim Beliar's skull before the Nazis could. This part here is why I loathe Act 3 so much. It is the sloggiest slog that ever slogged. I'm trying to reach Beliar's skull, and that means a long, grueling journey down the mines. This is where the aforementioned glowy blue orb system to represent your next objective really showed its limitations. It does not account whatsoever for walls or elevation. Exploration quickly became a tedious case of trial and error, and this is the most maze-like part of the whole game. There are also new super Damites, and these big gooey lobsters are a real pain. They're bullet spongy as hell, and I just had to start trying to ignore combat wherever possible. My goal in all this was clearing the way forward blocked by rubble, but I had to track down explosives deep in the Nazi buildings and then locate an officer to gain the detonator. We're using some speed up here to try and illustrate just how much work went into getting through this area. We often cannot convey the sheer tedium that some of these games involve, so there's always the VODs channel if you want more of an idea of what goes into beating these. I located the officer, and by now killing non-boss ones is easy as pie. With the explosives and detonator on hand, I of course needed to backtrack all the way to the rubble, and then I was finally able to clear it. You then move on to the next area, and you do it all again! Add to that the return of my arch nemesis, water, and also more of those Panzerschrecks from earlier, and it could be really hard to survive. On my travels, I encountered the now demodified Commando, but he was an absolute joke compared to last time. Choppy choppy, Commando boppy. The water and the Shreks were the real problem. I was on death's door a number of times, and a failure could have sent me back at least 20 minutes. Mercifully, I did manage to squeak by, and with yet another officer slain, there were only 3 remaining. We're so close! After I used the final set of explosives, I had to then use a series of pumps to unlock the way into the true depths of the mine. With that nearly hour-long gauntlet cracked, we entered our next main segment, the Temple. To reach Beliar's skull, I needed to find the core. Unsurprisingly, this involved lots of combat. Lots of combat. This whole area is a long series of jumps and falls across tendrils. As usual, it was hard to know where to go. Each mini area is capped off by a gooey door, and slashing an eyeball opens it so you can delve deeper. The final section was super hard. I had to slay Guardians, which is 4 super Damites in a row. This was so tough. I had to deal with both them and a bunch of Nazis with rockets and guns. Blood Rage doesn't even make these fights trivial like it usually does. They are very hard to kill and they hit like trucks. My first attempt quickly resulted in death, and that sent me back a good 10 minutes. So of course you have to do it all again and then do the same fight too. My second attempt was close, but right before I got the killing blow, I fell to the last Guardian. Aye aye aye. Thankfully on the third go around I knew exactly how to cheese this fight, and slaying the Guardians opened the path to the skull. Nothing's ever easy of course. I had to climb through Jabu Jabu's belly over many tricky jumps just to reach the chamber. Once I was there, even getting the skull was a royal pain. The chamber is massive and full of toxic fumes, and there's also water at the bottom, so multiple ways to die quickly. As crazy agile as Rayne is, there are limits to how steeply she can walk and what jumps she can make, so finding the correct path through here took me a number of goes. After hours of pain, I'd finally reached my prize, Beliar's crystal skull. Although it turns out the real relic is actually the eye contained within, and just like that rib right in the beginning, the eye embedded itself inside Rayne. This unlocks another power, extruded view. This allows first-person view and can be used to snipe precisely with weapons. No time to stop and smell the daisies though. The Nazis broke through into the chamber and are planning to blow the entire area to bits with explosives to destroy the ever-increasing army of Damites. This section was tough. I needed to make my way back through the mines whilst a never-ending barrage of explosions are occurring. With nobody to eat around, health is scarce, and there is not really any way to avoid the explosions besides dumb luck. I almost made it on my first try, but before I realized I needed to jump out of the tunnels, I was already blown to bits. A quick second attempt though, and I succeeded in reaching safety. Well, not really safety, because it was time for another boss fight. Mauler is a ridiculously big cyborg who also acts as an exposition dump. Long story short, Beliar was actually the original devil. That's right, the actual devil. He was supplanted by Mephisto, who tore him into pieces and scattered them all over. The relics we've been finding, like the rib and the eye, are those pieces. Jürgen Wolf has now located the most important relic, Beliar's heart, under a place called Castle Gestadt, and if he gets it, we're gonna have a bad time. Before we can deal with that though, we have to finish off Mauler. He hits appropriately hard, and if you try and finesse him by using the high ground, he starts smashing the supports, causing the area to collapse. I just had to utilize dilated perception to chip him down while staying safe, and once I had Blood Rage farmed up, I went to town. Now we only have 2 targets to go, but the game was about to pull a fast one. I reached the end of the area, and Rayne receives a message from the Brimstone Society saying a Nazi at the GGG headquarters has a new target list. A pre-rendered cutscene plays, and honestly, it's awesome. Probably the coolest thing in the whole game. Rayne infiltrates the castle and does some spooky vampire things. If the gameplay were half as cool as this makes it look, I'm sure this would be a totally different video. It finished with her slaying the GGG officer and taking the target list. So, after all those hours of effort, and being so close to killing all 16 targets, I'm essentially reset and I have to kill another 16 targets. This was pretty frustrating to say the least. Now the good news is the vast majority of these new guys are total fodder. The initial area of the castle is pretty massive and just packed with dudes all over the shop, with most of them being led by one of my targets. So I was just swanning around and quickly slashing through them. One noteworthy thing is that the enemies have upped the ante and they have new technology, making my earlier Red Skull and Hydra analogy even more relevant. They now have jetpack bros flying around, and the guns they wield pack a real punch. As I worked my way deeper into the castle, I encountered a pack of these weird ashen-looking creatures which attacked and abducted one of my targets. Apparently these are also vampires, but centuries of isolation has morphed them into bestial forms. They aren't any harder to kill though really. Your average enemy is pretty low tier, and since they count as humanoid, I could drink all the blood that I need to. Now I really hated the mines, but this section is competing for my most loathed. This is probably the single worst area of the game when it comes to vagueness. The glowy ball does not help you navigate whatsoever, and almost every single door of this castle is just locked, making getting around unbelievably tedious. I spent a good 20 minutes roaming the place looking for my targets and how the hell to proceed. Even worse, at one point I thought I'd actually softlocked myself by falling into a room with no exits nor a path to proceed. Eventually I realized that I could smash through a stained glass window, a mechanic that's never been mentioned before, and I then simply could not work out what I was supposed to do to make the next cutscene trigger. Eventually I was forced to do something I never do in this challenge, and that's look up the solution, and even once we figured it out, it was the dumbest thing. Okay, I have discovered a way out. Again, it's not ever obvious what is destructible terrain and what's not. Okay, you can shoot it. Thank you. That is certainly literally, dude. Like, this has never been a thing before. It's never been a thing since. It didn't give you any clue. I hate games like this that don't give you any information. Just when I thought things couldn't get weird or disjointed enough, we suddenly were in a mech piloting section. Rayne steals a giant stompy boy, complete with chain gun and rocket launcher, and I went on a killing spree, blasting my way through ground troops and other mechs alike. This bit was pretty entertaining, although it was quite short. I did manage to kill a couple more of those 16 targets here, and I'm not really going to recap each of them like I did originally, because the majority of these guys are just totally generic. I did encounter more of those jetpack Andes though, and they're still a pain to deal with. But once I had my poor dumpy boy blew up, and I was back to navigating on foot. I did some Assassin's Creed climbing to reach the next area, and we saw the ancient vampire thingies are starting to overwhelm the Nazis. We then also had a surprise encounter with an old friend, and we were treated to that stellar voice acting we all know and love.
What? Mintz is alive? And she's working for that bastard wolf? That bitch. I'm gonna tear her apart.
So Mintz did die after looking at a frog.
I thought you were dead.
Thinking never was your strong point.
Bitch.
That really hurt. Are you here to talk or do something about it?
Why are you doing this?
Come on, little girl.
And I missed the incredible voice acting of Mintz. This boss fight's a weird one. She's cheesing it up an infinite staircase, and I had to chase after her and try and chop her up. It didn't take very long with BloodRayne to chunk her HP bar down, and doing so initiated the cutscene where she falls off a cliff. She then fakes me out by saving herself, and then she just falls anyway, and is apparently eliminated. Okay. At this point, we're just permanently baffled, and that wasn't about to change anytime soon, so I just continued my way to the next area. Here, the Nazis and vampires are in an all-out war, and I had to keep eliminating targets whilst navigating my way through the lot of them. This was initially straightforward, as most of the guys were just along a linear path, but then, in a recurring theme with this game, progress halted and I could not work out how to proceed. As usual, the glowy orb system provides zero help, and you wind up exploring a giant area with no clue what the game wants you to do. After another 10 minutes of frustration, it turned out that there is a trigger point which will cause an airstrike to begin, but it's in a very arbitrary location that looks no different to any of the others and is not indicated by the orb. Some fine game design there, devs, great work. Still, I was emboldened because we are so close to the end and I really wanted to finish this slog. My next objective required a leap of faith off a cliff, and once I did so, our mountain confusion reached fever pitch. Okay. I don't trust this game. Not even a little bit.
Hedrox. Hello. Long way from home, Hedrox. What's the score?
Who's Hedrox?
We want the heart, the liar's heart.
Relic's not unlike the one in you, Ray. Hedrox wants the secret. Tell Hedrox. How does Hedrox put the relic in the body?
Sure. You have to cut your heart out and replace it with Beliar's.
Do you not think Hedrox has tried? Does Rayne forget? Hedrox is...
Who's Hedrox?
Hedrox wants the secret.
Why would I know he's infinite? I didn't know him.
Hedrox, I'm gonna do the same thing to you that you did to Voiku.
Who the f is Hedrox, dude? Now, I still have no clue who Hedrox is. This is the first time he was mentioned, but apparently Rayne knows him. He is supposedly infinite and cannot die, so fighting him the conventional way was not working. Instead, I had to chop through a bunch of wooden supports, and that was causing the rooms to collapse, and eventually he was dumped into some water. The remaining Hedroxes said that they will find a way to absorb Beliar's heart, and he ran away. What is happening? Then, in case my whiplash wasn't severe enough, we warp into the next area, and we have to proceed across a minefield, eliminate the last few targets along the way, and try and reach the final boss. This was all a massive pain. Nearly every soldier here is rocking a Panzerschreck, and the mines are anything but obvious. Even worse, the enemies have some of those big mechs from earlier, and they are essentially immune to damage. I finally caught up with Jürgen Wolf, and he did some crazy Wesker shenanigans, and he just dips. This forced me to try and cross a mine-covered bridge that explodes under your feet whilst being fired upon by mechs, jetpack Andys, and one of the last few officers. It took me a number of goes to crack this nut. It was really tough, man. The infinite healing of sucking blood will only help you if you're out healing the damage, and that just wasn't feasible. After many attempts, I did suss out an effective path, and I managed to use Blood Rage to quickly deal with the officer, which would then open the way to proceed. I like to move on to the final boss fight because it's a doozy, so there's just a couple of bits to cover. First, I saw a pair of GGG members fighting a bunch of Hedroxes. Apparently these are the doppelganger twins, and like always, Rayne chats with them like she knows who they are. This battle was a bit quirky as it followed a trope commonly used in MMOs. The twins have a lifelink ability. This means the damaging one will hurt the other and they must both be killed simultaneously. They run around and make it pretty annoying to target the correct one, but as has always been the case, Blood Rage does good work. I did almost die, and only through very precise movement and dilated perception was I able to whittle them down. With those two dispatched, we are nearly done eliminating the GGG. After climbing a ladder, I bumped into Mintz again, and even Rayne mentions how annoying it is that she keeps coming back to life. Apparently, Mintz is a double agent that was still working for Brimstone when she infiltrated the GGG. Apparently, she has also eliminated one of our targets, which crosses them off the list. She says that if we let Jürgen take Beliar's heart from Hedrox, he will become invincible and conquer the world. Surely, though, through the power of friendship, we can stop him. There are those, and he looked dead. No, bitch! She's dead again! Bitch, I was so attached. So, here we are. We finally caught up to Wolf, and he says that Hedrox is waiting for us both in the cathedral below. Sounds like a three-way fight to gain Beliar's heart. Of course, we need one more nonsensical cutscene for the road. Hedrox apparently killed our second-to-last target off-screen, so that only leaves Jürgen Wolf to eliminate the GGG completely. Hedrox then absorbs the heart, but rather than gaining its power, the heart seizes Hedrox's body and Beliar begins to resurrect. Beliar says that both Rayne and Wolf have his remaining body parts inside them, and he needs them to regain his full might. Thus ensues the final boss battle. Often with these videos and playthroughs, the final boss of a game is quick and can be quite anticlimactic. Here, that is decidedly not the case. This fight was nuts. It's supposedly a free-for-all, but that is not the case. Beliar and Wolf cannot or will not hurt each other, and that means it's essentially a 2v1. I'm just going to list off here the myriad of things that make this fight so insane. 1. You cannot suck blood from anybody, meaning you have very finite health and no way to restore it. 2. Beliar can only be hurt by explosives or using the sniping power that we unlocked to directly attack his heart. 3. Explosives are very limited, and the ribcage makes hitting the heart virtually impossible, and both Beliar and Wolf will constantly attack you, and taking damage forces you out of sniping mode. 4. Wolf effectively has an aimbot and can shoot you accurately from a mile away. He also zooms around the arena and is completely immune to all damage except melee. And number 5, the big one, Beliar has what amounts to a rage mechanic. The longer the fight lasts, the bigger he grows. The bigger he is, the harder he hits, and the more difficult it is to damage him. All of these factors combine to make this one of the most difficult fights I've had to do in this challenge to date. I put in a solid hour of attempts on this, and I had to try every strategy that I could. I tried killing Beliar first, I tried killing Wolf first, I tried to LOS them with the terrain, I tried so many things, but man, it's rough. Your health bar is just so limited, and Wolf just racks up constant damage with his perfect aim. Several times I managed to kill one of them, but Beliar would enrage if I took care of Wolf first, or Wolf would just finish me off if vice versa. After about an hour, we discovered that there were various explosive weapons hidden on parts of the terrain, and we sussed out all the locations. You still need really good aim to hit the heart, even with explosives, and you need to do it really quickly before Beliar can start to grow, and you have to not let Wolf kill you in the meantime. But I was finally on a really good pace. Belia was dead and I had enough health to think I could beat Wolf. It's so incredibly annoying to fight him, even with Belia gone. He just runs around, making it so difficult to rack up damage. I had to always be in dilated perception so I could dodge bullets and flame breath attacks, or I would die really quickly. He is totally immune to all damage except melee, and even in Blood Rage, my attacks only tickled him. I came super close to dying here, and at this point I was just so desperate for it to be over. After 7.5 hours of pain though. He tried to breathe fire at me! Just kill him, dude! It's so close! Please! Yes, dude! Man, that was rough. And that, my friends, concludes BloodRayne, an extremely odd adventure that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. It took me 7 hours and 37 minutes to beat, and I was so happy when this was done. I gave this one an 8 for difficulty. There are lots of brutal sections, many tedious choices to overcome, and of course that filthy final boss fight. Enjoyment scored a 3. I found a lot of the game to be repetitive, but there's just enough so bad it's good energy to make it entertaining in parts. If you made it to the end, then please enjoy a sneak peek at what I'll be playing next time. As is the norm, Game 35 was a community vote. This time the winner was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or the Sorcerer's Stone depending on your region. I was excited for this one. There are so many different versions of this particular game, so I was curious to see how the GameCube version compares. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for that one. Bye bye.